All right.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Friday Morning Arcade. I'm your host, Brady Keith, joined as my co-host.
Nick Ryan, and today we will be talking about not just one Soul Calibur,
Not just two,
not just three,
not just four,
not just five.
but all six main games.
Yeah.
We're wanting up Stephen A. Smith. It ain't Lakers in 5. It's Soul Calibur in 6.
But yeah, man, this has been probably, when we planned this out, what was about 2 weeks ago?
3.
Oh, yeah, yes, three. I was super stoked about this one, so yeah, let's get on into it.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna pass off the lead here to you. This is
okay.
your franchise. I've played a couple of these and most of them, but this is your franchise. This is your baby.
Yeah. So starting off with Soul Calibur Uno or 1, we kind of start off with this basis. A lot of fighting game franchises start off with a basis. Very vanilla, not too dynamic. I mean, if you look at stuff like Street Fighter 1 or Tekken 1, you really don't see a whole lot of like people saying, "Oh yeah, this is my favorite out of the series." However, with Soul Calibur 1, this is super unique because this has one huge divot in it, and it's the fact that this was one of the very first 3D fighting games. So your games like Tekken and Samurai Showdown, a lot of those games came from Soul Calibur 1. Now, I'm not sure how many 3D fighting games you've played. How many have you played, actually? I want to pick your brain on...
That's a great question.
Well, I know that you probably played Tekken 8, right?
I've
Okay.
played the Tekkens, I've played the Mortal Kombats, I've played the Soul Caliburs. I was also trying to think about how many like the 3D platform brawlers I've played too.
That's technically one of them as well. PlayStation All-Stars.
I've played a decent amount. I can't put a direct number to it, but I've played a decent amount.
Yeah, so there's this basis within the first Soul Calibur that has never been touched before. And basically, to put it to you this way, Soul Calibur 1 walked so that way Tekken 1 could run. And putting that kind of makes it sound like that this game isn't bad. It obviously has its flaws. This game came out in like the 90s. Of course it's going to. But the fact that this game, with the asset work that was on display, it was absolutely beautiful. Now, you've played Soul Calibur 1, right?
Yeah, I've played.
Okay,
I've played a
yeah.
chunk of it.
So, because my playstyle kind of revolves around the sword mechanics, which was new for fighting games, because a lot of your fighters, it came down to hand-to-hand combat. But there was also a lot of really great hand-to-hand combat in Soul Calibur 1 as well. Between those two, what do you gravitate towards?
See, later games it will change, which we'll talk about later. But I was hand to hand. I like the feel of the melee. I don't like you can't actually feel it, but you understand what I'm coming from. I like the feel of your punches mattering. I like the feel of your feeling like what it is like the feel of your punch can knock somebody out or your punch can do damage and stuff. That was kind of a cool little factor. Like obviously it's your sword, it's gonna hurt, but just in the games where you can just punch Saitama and win, it's like it feels kind of nice and feels fun.
Yeah, like, and one thing that like kind of was missing out of the fighting genre was that effectiveness of a singular punch. A lot of fighting games then were based around your specials. Games like Mortal Kombat and even Street Fighter, a lot of them was based around fatalities. There's very few regular attacks from the original MK to where it was like, oh man, that just there's a visceral reaction. The only one that I can really think of is Scorpion's what is it called, kunai, to where he like, get over here, like that's
His chain dagger
yeah.
chase. Get over here.
Yeah. Aside from that, like, there's not too many like regular attacks that really have that, reaction.
The thing with that though, in Mortal Kombat, and like Mortal Kombat and Tekken and Street Fighter, the reason why I like Soul Calibur 1 above them is because those games, they're combos. You have like 4 buttons you have to press to hit the kunai drag or something like that. This game I can just I don't want to say button mash, but button mash and and my punches mean something versus inputting in like up left right down X Y B A like
yeah.
like that's what I like about the melee system in Soul Calibur is like it feels like I'm actually punching and kicking or something like that and not just implementing a combo of buttons to do something.
Yeah, and that's one of my biggest things, and obviously I think it comes from the 3D aspect, which if you don't know what I mean by 3D aspect, basically instead of doing a flat screen where you either go right or left, you're able to by hitting the the lateral buttons twice, you're able to actually move towards or away, which means that it kind of, the best way I can say is that it kind of feels like almost a Dark Souls game in a way, to where it's like, oh, this isn't just a regular fighting game, this is more of like an arena brawler, which I know that like the Naruto games and the Dragon Ball games kind of I kind of made that more accessible and made it their own. But Soul Calibur really established that whole idea of like, oh, we're not just gonna, limit you to your movement. You're going to have a 3-dimensionality of where your position is. And for a lot of play styles, position is really where that's the key to winning a round or even a set. So, but yeah, I again, I really love Soul Calibur 1, but its age is a big thing, and graphically and stuff, there just really isn't a whole lot to go off of. And especially as we get on to
4 to 6, those games, they're old, but they look
yes.
a whole lot better.
And even the next game really ups the ante. So yeah, I think that's
all right. So this will be the end of Soul Calibur 1, and in the next clip you shall see Soul Calibur 2.
So we're back, and we're going to start talking about Soul Calibur 2. Now this one, I have a bunch of thoughts about, and with a lot of fighting games, going from your first entry to your second, there is a huge upgrade usually. If you look at something like Mortal Kombat 1 to Mortal Kombat 2, or even something to the point of Street Fighter 1 to Street Fighter 2, you see like a huge upgrade, not just visually, but a lot of the time gameplay mechanics. So, Brady, do you want to start off?
Yeah. The one thing I'm going to start off with is I feel like this game bettered the characters than Soul Calibur 1 had. Because with this game, it is there's a thing in anime that it's like a multiversal tournament with a whole bunch of where you put like a whole bunch of people together, and that's what these games are, and I really love this. This one had it had some of my favorite characters. It had Spawn, it had Link, it had so many like cool characters. It had like a berserker from Soul Calibur 1 as a playable character. Like it's such a fun aspect of these games is it is a multiversal, multi-game fighting simulator. It's so fun. Like, I miss these games. This is like one of its kind. It had like heck, they had their own special edition for Star Wars that we'll probably talk about here later. But still, this game, it's so fun. There's so many different aspects to it because it's each game. There's some characters that stay the same, but there's different characters from different games, so you're always getting something new. Sorry, somebody opened the door. Problems of having a multi-space
Yeah.
shared studio,
Yeah.
but it's just fun.
Yeah.
You're getting something different each game. This is why I think it lasted as long as it did in the fighting game genre, because it was a different fighting game than everything else out there.
Yeah, so what was cool with Soul Calibur 2, so whenever we started preparing for this episode, I went back and I started to replay a lot of the original games, just because whenever you get to a certain console generation, a lot of visual hints, if you will, start to kind of go out the window. For instance, a game like Marvel vs. Capcom is going to look a lot like something to the point of the SNK series, or the later points of the SNK series. And so because of that, I went back and I totally forgot which. I thought that it was Soul Calibur 3, but instead it was Soul Calibur 2.
And before we continue, we are short on time, so this is going to be a part 1 of 2. So we will stop and finish. We'll stop at Soul Calibur 3, and then the next games we'll do 4, 5, and 6. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, but yeah, with Soul Calibur 2, I was like doing my research because I was like, okay, which one is the one that I like? And I looked on Otaku. I think that's what the website is called. But
don't look it up. Don't look it up on like Urban Dictionary or anything like that. Like, we'll probably have to cut this part out, but you got to be careful because it can lead to certain bad sites.
Oh yeah.
So
But
we'll probably cut this out, so you won't be seeing this, but you might see it in the blooper reel.
But yeah, like stuff like IGN and a lot of your other gaming websites and review sites as well, when looking at like, the top 100 fighting games of all time or whatever, it always came back to like the top 5 always revolving around Soul Calibur 2. So I was like, man, okay, maybe it is Soul Calibur 2. And then I started playing it. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. So, first of all, going towards the characters, if you liked any of the MK games from 9 to 1, and maybe your mains were DLC
Rambo,
characters.
Like, you had so many DLC characters.
Mhm.
I think these games are what inspired Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
For sure.
Again, I hate saying that because it makes it sound like I'm downplaying this game, but Soul Calibur 2 walked so that way all of the later MK games, and even if you want to call it, you could say that even Super Smash Brothers could run. Exactly. So I sat there, I was like, oh man, all right, well, what are these additional characters? So the way that it works is that these games came out on, I believe, 3 different consoles. The PlayStation 1 or 2, the Dreamcast or Sega, and the Game Boy. Now, since all of these games have their own exclusives, what they were able to do is that they were able to implement a lot of these exclusive characters into the game. So, for instance, with the Game Boy, you had Link. With the Dreamcast, it was Spawn, I think. And with the PlayStation, it was...
Street Fighter. There was Tekken 8 characters.
Oh, yeah. Teihachi, I think.
Teihachi, but also Yoshimitsu or
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Um, so a lot of these games really like just burst onto the scene, or like the way that you were able to kind of personalize your own copy of the game. It felt super unique, and not that many like games actually do that anymore. So again, that's really awesome. But yeah, but one of my biggest kind of things that I got out of this game was the fact of how great the combat was. And what they did was so kind of like what Brady was talking about. I really loved the melee combat in this game. Um, there were a couple characters who had swords in the first game, but I didn't really touch on it just because I really loved that like very action-packed, oriented gameplay. But then I got my hands on Link and a bunch of these other characters, and I was like, "Oh wow, this is actually really, really, really cool." And the gameplay, just absolute the diversity of the gameplay was absolutely perfect. If you wanted a Shoto-esque character, you could do a hand-to-hand combat Shoto-esque character. You could do a sword Shoto. If you wanted arena control, you had hand-to-hand. And so a lot of this diversity came out of just because of the way that the cosmetics worked, and absolutely loved that. And obviously, one of the coolest things was the visuals. The visuals had a huge upgrade. Kind of going towards, I really loved that early PlayStation 1 era, Game Boy era of like 3D graphics, to where it was like you could see all of the polygons. But
Tomb Raider.
yeah, Tomb Raider is a perfect example. And like because those games had charm and really showed what the art styles were, slowly bleeding into. But yeah, you got anything else you want to talk about?
See, what he was saying about this game starting the love of the sword fighting, I think it just has to deal with the roster, because I just went back and looked through it. It was like 11 swordsmen and the rest were melees. So I think this game did something interesting because it had more swordsmen than it had melee characters, but it gave you that competitive edge if you were a melee player to be better than the swordsman players. Like it knew how to do esports before esports really existed.
Yeah.
It gave that sense of like, I'm gonna be the best melee player. I'm gonna be able to beat all these swordsmen and whatnot. So I think that was a really cool aspect. Is like, even though it feels like, oh, Soul Calibur just wanted to have so many swordsmen. They just want swordsmen. They like swordsmen.
Mm-mm.
No, it was a cool feature that it instilled that.
It, it helped with like personalization. So if you wanted a specific play style, you were able to choose from either hand to hand or whether you were wanting to do a swordsman. And that's something with like Marvel Rivals is kind of known for, towards like a lot of characters are not purely DPS. They are DPS with a little bit of support or whatever, and I absolutely adore that. But yeah. Anyways, back to what you were talking about. I kind of interrupted you.
No,
there.
you're good. I still can't think of the word, but still, it gave such a fun little side emotion to it.
Yeah.
So I think this is gonna end Soul Calibur 2 in Chapter 2, and now we shall move on to Soul Calibur 3. Welcome back. Welcome to Chapter 3, the final part of this episode. We are on Soul Calibur 3.
Yeah.
And since I started the last chapter, it's your turn.
All right. So Soul Calibur 3. So Soul Calibur 3, I remember not being as great as what Soul Calibur 2 was, obviously. But one of the coolest things about it was that for a lot of what Soul Calibur 2 kind of based itself upon within the combat, which we talked about in the previous chapter, they expanded that, which meant that instead of just having a sword, there were certain characters, I believe, who had pole arms or like kendo sticks, I guess. I think that there was one that had a Kurosama. So you had a lot of diversity, which I think that this game, I don't know, I feel like this game added on um, a new dimension to the whole idea of personalized play styles that a lot of games didn't.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like this, what he was saying, it did. It you had the swordsman, you had your melees, and then you had your other ones. Like there was a hammer play style with
Oh,
like
yeah.
the golem character. I can't think of his name right now, and I just looked at it. ADHD people, but no, it just this game. It's not as great as the other ones. It basically what it is. What Soul Calibur was. Woo! It was like a. It's a windy graph of like good game, bad game, good game, bad game. But this game, it may not have been as great as Soul Calibur 2, like thing shows, but it introduced so much. It introduced more play styles, more fighting techniques, more ways to be intrigued with combat by adding new characters with their signature weapons and stuff like that.
Yeah, this was a perfect like balance between, because there's a lot of games that have like way too few characters on their rosters, and because of it, you know, you only have, two or three characters per play style, But with this game, I felt that it wasn't overly bloated as well, like something like Street Fighter or 5, where it was like you have like 5 Shotos and like it was insane how many like characters they had on there, and it was like the only difference was like cosmetics. Like there was no like diversity within. Mm,
I mean, this game had a lizard.
yeah,
You could
yeah,
play a literal
right.
lizard.
Right, and it is that kind of like perspective of like we already laid the groundwork for 1. We now understand what people like with 2. Let's just constantly keep building that up and up and up, and obviously I forget what there's a total of 16 games.
We're only covering the main games.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have the patience to sit there and play 16 games for an hour.
I don't either. I don't have the storage on my console for 16 games.
Yeah, but just the fact of like it's that whole narrative of like, and this is something that I feel has been kind of lost with a lot of modern fighting games, is that whole idea of like we want our players to feel like they are a part of something, that they have their own identity within the game. And that's something that if you look at like old like tournaments and stuff from this game, you see that there's no one running the same character. Everyone has their own mains, and everyone, has their own play style. It's just, it leans on that, line of perfection, and unfortunately, with how great Soul Calibur 2 was, for what Soul Calibur 3 did was not per se disappointing, but it didn't get up to that level of greatness.
It just fell short.
Yeah, it fell short just a little bit, which I mean, with any type of product, once you make a really great thing, it's hard to follow that up with another thing, So it is what it is, but obviously, like after playing it I did feel kind of that like lackluster, like, oh man, this kind of isn't what I was expecting, as a follow up. But it was also like, oh, they improved a lot of things that, I wouldn't have as a game designer, if I was one, like, I would have just kept it the same, And it's that kind of mentality of like, you know, throwing out that whole ideology of like whatever isn't broken, don't fix, and they do that, and they do that well, So, but yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, the problem I have with this game is I get what they were trying to do and what they're because they didn't want to copy and paste. They want to better themselves. They want each game to be different. But when you have a game like Soul Calibur 2, it's hard.
Yeah,
It really is hard for the follow up and maybe even for the rest of the series. It's hard to follow to continue because I don't want to say it. You peaked. I'm gonna say it, but I just don't like it. You peaked with Soul Calibur 2, and the rest kind of just are lackluster. But it's a hard thing to do in the world of games. It's a hard thing to have a good game and then have an even greater game the next one you release. Like only a certain few developers and game makers can do that.
yeah, yeah. It's that, and I kind of like what you said, that like it's that masterfulness that very few people like are able to kind of grab hold of, and a lot of those times those people, it's through luck, So, but yeah, I, like the visuals didn't really change, so
Nah, they were kind of they kept what I think they did is they basically took Soul Calibur 2, imported it over to Soul Calibur 3, did a little extra coding, little extra character adding, and then sent it off to be made.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah. So if I'm seeing this correctly, Soul Calibur.
Star Killer.
Yeah. So Soul Calibur 3 had.
Well, hang on. That's telling us what. Okay,
Oh.
so
Oh, okay.
okay, so we're looking at a picture of like special characters from games like Soul Calibur 3.
3 had some random anime woman.
Yeah, hang on. I got the list of characters on my phone. But they had what show me her face again.
Crap. Oh, yeah, right here.
I don't know. I can't.
Yeah.
I don't seem to. But they had the Soul Calibur game had so much like fun characterization with their characters, and like this one didn't really add any sort of like
Yeah,
they didn't have any sort of like
like variety, I guess.
yeah, they had some of their characters from like their lore that they added that you could play, like Raphael,
Yeah. Well,
Voldo.
yeah, the thing is that like, and even looking at that, like, seeing how there were 3 or 4 main characters from Soul Calibur 2, and then seeing 1 from Soul Calibur 3, it's like, really? And then, which, spoiler alert, Soul Calibur 4 gets like really, really good, as seen through this picture that, which, yeah, they really
I think it's
upped the
Soul
ante.
Calibur 4 that also had the Star Wars edition, and when they expanded to adding the Xbox 360.
Yep. And then with 5, it was like, in my
With
opinion.
5, you had a gigantic like Greek statue as a playable character,
Mm-hmm.
which we'll talk about in part 2.
Yeah, yeah.
But still, I think our only thing with this game, it fell short because it was hard to follow
Mhm.
what is Soul Calibur 2
Yeah.
and what is probably, in my opinion, the best Soul Calibur game.
Yeah, that's for sure. But yeah. Yeah. Anyways,
That-
and this is part uno of the first half of our Soul Calibur ranking and kind of overview of the series. Come back next week where we cover Soul Calibur
Nope.
4.
Come back next week where we cover Assassin's Creed Shadows.
Oh, that's right. And then
And then Deadpool. And then little secret game.
Yeah, yeah.
Little secret game. And then we'll do part 2 since we already had the schedule planned out. But stay tuned. We might have a special guest for the secret game.
yeah,
All
So, yeah.
depends. So anyway, we're just signing off from the arcade.
deuces.
Ooses.